You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Welcome to another episode of the Funny Peculiar podcast. This is episode 7. Thank you to everybody that's been downloading and subscribing. If you want to come on the show, do get in touch with me. You can email me at funnypeculiarpodcast@gmail.com, or you can get me through the Instagram account, which is Funny Peculiar Podcast. So if you're burlesque, circus performer, drag, whatever, something that's alternative, give us a call. This week I've got Mr. Freak, who's a sword swallower and does fire eating and is a blockhead. He'll explain all of these. You'll understand what these terms mean. If you want to follow him on his Instagram account while the interview's going, you can. It is Mr. Freak _sword swallower. So you can get him there. I'll give you all his details at the end of where you can follow and find him. But without further ado, let's get on with the interview. And please welcome Mr. Freak. Hi, welcome to Funny Peculiar, and as we are meeting all different types, this week we have a sword swallower. So, hello there, and I think I'm right in saying Mr. Freak.
Yep, that's me.
Hi there. Hello, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, great. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Now, there's lots of acts out there, and there's lots of different, when we say circus act, that's such a broad term these days.
Yeah.
Just describe to me what your act is.
So, I suppose I would bill myself as a comedy sideshow act.
Okay.
I am a sword swallower. That is my main shtick, although I do things like fire eating, fire breathing, human pincushion, human blockhead, that sort of thing. I try and kind of find there's this really interesting divide between English sideshow, current English sideshow, and current American sideshow, whereas the Americans tend to go for more the history of things with great people like Todd Robbins, who I met quite recently, amazing guy.
Yeah.
So they tend to go for more the history of the sideshow, whereas we tend to go for the shock value and the neon lights and the mohawked hair and things like that. I try and find a nice mesh of those things and keep them together with the glue of comedy, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's it. Because, I suppose Americans have that sideshow of the Barnum type character, the top hat, and that's kind of what it's. So over here, it's a more. There was it the Jim Rose show, which was like a travelling sort of freak show thing, and that was kind of that typifies the British style. Is that right?
Yeah. We always went for more spectacle type thing. It's quite interesting now. In England, I would say the most prevalent sideshow or oddity show would be the Circus of Horrors, which really epitomises England's current attitude towards sideshow.
Right. And so the two, so we've got the different styles, but this is and this goes back to now circus traditions. How old is, say, sword swallowing, for example?
As a form of performance.
Is that the same for America? Oh, really? Is that the same? That old? The same sort of?
Yeah, as well as some tribes in different like farther reached places use them as sort of a warrior trial. They would, I can't remember the name of this tribe now, but there's a tribe off in some jungle somewhere where they would ram long sticks of bamboo into their throats before going into battle. And this would be
right.
trial by suffering sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's a rites of passage for a young male warrior. That's where it originally came from.
Yeah, well, one of the many places where it is kind of evolved from. I believe, it evolved there separately to where we get sword swallowing from, which would be mainly Egyptian performance manuscripts and things being handed down over the years. The Indian yogis swallowing swords, the mystics from the East, that sort of thing.
Oh, right. So it's gone back that far. I didn't know it was that old.
Oh, yeah. Older, like I say, than any monotheistic religion.
Right. Okay. So it's like you could certainly walk into church and have a few vicars out with that one. So it's like you could start.
If you wanted to, yes.
Yeah, all kneel and praise me, basically. So you're offering yourself up as a god. That's what you're trying to tell me. No. So,
I mean, only on a Thursday. Only on a Thursday.
so it's like, so okay, I didn't know. And then, so around with, say, for example, sword swallowing, there's other. Now I've seen your pictures and your Facebook page. You do contortion stuff as well. Is that part of what you do?
That's how I started street performing. That's how I started my busking career, I guess. My shoulder blades are hypermobile,
Okay.
so I pop them out of socket and move them about in a lot of strange ways. And from learning that, a clown called Joseph May, who's an amazing clown, taught me the tennis racket contortion.
Right, okay.
And I learned that I could do it with the tennis racket going lengthways and sideways as well, which is where you force your body through the frame of two tennis rackets.
Right, okay. And how did this all start? If we go right back to the beginning, so how did your interest start? How did you work out that you can do something like that?
Well, the things with the contortions were I just found out that my bones move in weird ways.
Yeah.
The start of my, I suppose, performance in circus and everything, about 2 weeks before my 6th birthday. My birthday is always fallen in the May bank holiday, like the May holiday thing.
Yeah.
So about 2 weeks before at school, they brought in a magician to end the term or the half term or whatever. And I saw this magician. I went running home and I asked my parents for a magic kit for my birthday. And the idiot bought me it. So essentially, that's all. So I started learning magic, never really grew out of it. And then I had to learn to juggle for a show, which I learned in around about 3 months, which is actually quite impressive because I'm dyspraxic. I don't have any hand-eye coordination.
Okay.
And from there, I joined a youth circus, learned to ride a unicycle in about 3 weeks. And from there, my favourite thing to watch was always the sword swallowers and the fire eaters and the freaks, essentially.
Okay, and that was and this is partly where your name comes from as well. So this is your Mr. Freak. So talk about how you came about your stage.
So the stage name Mr. Freak is partially an ode to the old sideshow freaks, the Johnny Eck, Joseph Merrick, Zippo, like that sort of era of the freak show. But it's also that's its secondary meaning. It originally came about because when I was younger, I was bullied quite a lot.
Okay.
Because I used to express myself quite freely. I was really into telling people about things that I was passionate about at the time. And so the nickname that I got in school was always Freak. It was always that there goes the freak. There is the freak. And one day I just got sick of it. I turned around and said, "That's Mr. Freak to you." And from there, it just kind of stuck. So that is the origins of the name Mr. Freak.
Okay, so that's the one you carry on, and you do a lot of. And I was saying as well, not just there's the magic, there's the fire eater. I've seen fire eating. Yeah. We'll get into, but I've also seen pictures on stage. You were in a production of Into the Woods, which was kind of a very punk, can I say, sort of performance, like you.
We did. Yeah, we did a steampunk reinterpretation of Into the Woods. Wow. It was amazing to be part of.
And who was behind that? Was that, I could see a group of you. Is that partly connected with steampunk then? And
so that was a amateur production of Into the Woods hosted by Time Theatre Productions. But the steampunk idea was on behalf of our director, Phil Dixon.
Okay.
Amazing talent, really good guy to work with. But he really wanted to bring the story out to a slightly newer audience. And really got excited about all the steampunk aspects.
And through obviously through that, then did this production, and it looked brilliant. It looked fantastic. But your main work is sword swallowing.
Sword
And
swallow.
and then, so how do you start getting into, for people listening, how the hell do you start training? I mean, when was the first time you obviously stuck something? Do you start with spoon handles and work your way up? How do you?
There's varying opinions on how you should learn to sword swallow. First of all, to anybody listening, I suggest quite heavily, don't try this yourself. Don't just go out and think what I'm about to say is universal and I'm going to go out and do it, because you will choke and you will die and it will be my fault. So please don't take this as gospel. What you should do is contact a sword swallower, become friends with them through a varying degree of manipulation and bribery, and get them to teach you how to sword swallow, which is what I tried to do for 3 to 4 years and eventually gave up and decided, balls to it, I'm going to teach myself. So what I did is called the 7x7 method. You take, say, a straightened out coat hanger, which is what I used.
Yeah.
And I know, right, ladies? 2 uses for a straightened out coat hanger. Who knew? That's terrible. Sorry.
No. I never knew there was. Well, this is what I'm into. What do you start on? So it's like, so coat hangers are a good one.
Yeah. So you take this straightened out coat hanger into your bathroom every morning before breakfast. Otherwise, it gets really messy.
Right.
And it's called the 7x7 method because you have 7 attempts to swallow each day, right in the morning, one by one, right in a row. And you do that for 7 days. And once you've done your 7 attempts, you stop for the day.
Right.
And then eventually, after a long time, you can slide a coat hanger down your throat. It's a horrific process, but it keeps me in, so I don't mind.
So it's basically because your body, you've got the regurgitation method in your throat is trying to prevent anything coming down. So you've just got to condition your throat.
So what you have to learn is to manually relax your gag reflex. What the gag reflex is there to do is to stop any food or any saliva trickling down into your lungs and filling it up. It's based on a little thing just meeting the esophagus and the trachea, called the esophageal sphincter, which when you eat, it opens up and shuts the trachea to stop any food falling in there, and then it closes so you can breathe properly.
Right, okay. So when you're actually then doing it and you've got swords down there, can you actually still breathe, or do you have to take a deep breath?
I can still breathe. It takes a long time to get to the place where you can breathe. It's not, you couldn't take a big gulp whilst you have a sword in you, but you can just about breathe after a long time of practice. Yeah.
So that's, you start off in this period of using the coat hanger, and you get through that 7 days.
Yeah.
And then when you got through that, was it like, I can do it?
The thing is, after that 7 days, you won't be able to swallow a coat hanger. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks and months. Some people it takes, I've heard of it taking up to 5 years. For me, I got a sword down in 31 days, which is weirdly fast. I don't know many people that have gotten a coat hanger at least down that fast.
And do you think, you were talking about the fact you can move your shoulder blades, you're kind of double jointed. Yeah. Do you think you then have got various aspects of your body that are just built in another way, which means you can do this?
I think certainly with my my shoulder blades and things like that, yes. With my esophagus, because you have to train it. It's not something anybody's naturally able to do. Otherwise, you would drown on your own drool.
Right.
Like anytime I'm at a bar and a girl comes up to me and says, "I have no gag reflex," I call her a fucking idiot and move along.
And you can disprove it on the spot there with basically just to. So it's So what was your so you got that going? So when was your very first show as a sword swallower? Do you remember that when you?
Yeah. My first show as a sword swallower was the first day I actually got a sword down. So I had been rehearsing sword swallowing for these 31 days, and whilst doing it, I had been busking on the streets, doing a small table show, doing the human blockhead, some of my flexibility stuff, and then something that I was calling sword swallowing, which is the balloon swallow. You might have seen somebody takes a modelling balloon, fully inflates it, and they swallow it down.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. It's a magic trick.
Oh, we smashed the illusion right there.
I know, I'm sorry. But it looks really good, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. That was my act for the street. And I was saying at the end, before I swallowed the balloon, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to see sword swallowing now. Because of Newcastle's open carry laws, I'm not currently allowed to have my swords on the street, but I am going through the current licensing laws to get my swords out on the street, which was complete bollocks.
Right.
There's no open carry laws. I don't need a card to carry around my swords because they're performance props, they're completely blunted and so on. It's just because I couldn't actually do this thing. So I was just making up bullshit to get to the point where I could swallow swords, and then I would come out and do the bit.
So you don't, and just to clarify, you don't need an open license to carry around coat hangers.
That is true. You do not need any sort of licensing.
So you're
maybe a medical license, doctor's license.
So that was so you were kind of buying a bit of time before you could actually, and then you came to do it on this particular performance that you did sword swallowing for the first time.
Yeah, so I had already gone out and bought a sword, which I actually still use. It's a replica weapon of Needle from the Game of Thrones books.
Oh, right, okay, all right.
That I cut down to size because all my swords are 18 inches long. Anything longer than that, and I'm either not going to be able to swallow it the whole way around, or it's going to be pinching down into my the base of my stomach, which is really uncomfortable. So I had cut it down, I had sanded it off and filed everything so it was nice and smooth.
Right,
and
okay. So it's no, sorry to say, it's no sharp edges, that's the other, it looks sharp, but it's just, it's all smooth. And also, so it's going down your windpipe and into your stomach, is that right?
It is not going down my windpipe because the windpipe leads to the lungs. It's going down my esophagus.
Oh, sorry, yeah, right, okay.
It's these little bits of anatomy that nobody really, unless you're training as a doctor, nobody really ever puts into context.
Yeah. It just looks like that when you see it, and I've seen from a distance. Like, okay, so it's like, so you managed to. So this was this performance this day. So and what did that feel like to say? Actually, there's this crowd of people, and you're sword swallowing for a first time.
At the time, it felt really good. It still does feel really. It's really strange. I'm kind of disassociated with it because I've for most of my life suffered with imposter syndrome, which is regardless of what you achieve, you always feel like you kind of don't deserve it. So even though I am a genuine sword swallower, I have done the practice, I've done the hard work, I swallow swords every day, I still don't feel like the real deal, and that's always kind of marred my experiences slightly.
Okay, is this similar with other sword swallowers? There's a circuit of you, I take it, that you chat to?
Yeah. It's a very small group of us. I think in the UK there are maybe 8 sword swallowers.
Really?
9.
Really?
Apart from me now, because I trained up a guy.
Right, okay.
9 of us, and I was the youngest sword swallower in the UK until I trained up this guy.
Right. Okay. So he's and is that partly to do with, do you think, entertainment's moved on? We have computer games, internet, cinema. That this is an old thing that nobody's really interested in, or
I don't think it's that nobody's interested. I think it is partially because entertainment has moved into so many different branches now. You can't. Like, nowadays, it's so easy to get any form of entertainment, you just go on your little magic screen and click a few buttons.
Yeah.
The olden days, you had to go out to a music hall if you wanted to see any sort of performances. But I think it's also because it is such a difficult skill to learn.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody's really putting in, well, very few people are really putting in the dedication it takes to learn it now.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a long process.
Yeah, as well as sword swallowers are kind of bastards to each other. We don't really want anybody else to learn it because scarcity creates more work for us.
Right. Okay, yes. Yeah. Okay. So, and you do fire eating as well. Is that again? Is that a similar process where you have to condition your mouth to say, or is it no?
Fire eating is much easier because it's based on an awful lot more science. It's based on thermal lag, the fact that something is hot, but if you're moving through it fast enough, or if you're directing the airflow in the correct way, you're not going to feel the heat.
Right.
It's that sort of thing. Thermal lag. Something hot takes a while to heat something cold up.
Right. Okay. So it's. And is that again like that's a very, very old traditional? We've seen it in films. Every time there's something in the medieval time, you'll see a fire eater or someone blowing fire. Is that how it? Yeah,
again, fire eating mainly comes from Eastern European religious demonstrations of like the yogis would eat fire to prove that they were in tune with their gods and things like that.
And you just use a. Don't give me any trade secrets. If we have to, is it what do you use? Is it unleaded diesel? I have.
No, don't use diesel. Diesel doesn't burn. Diesel explodes.
Oh right.
So I use paraffin. Paraffin is it's not a cool burning fuel, but it's colder than, say, a few other things. The Americans actually have the edge over us because they can easily get a thing called Coleman's camp fuel, which is a vapor burning fuel. So the actual liquid doesn't burn; it's the vapor that the liquid emits that burns.
Okay.
Which means you can do these really beautiful vapor tricks, like holding the flame in your mouth and transferring it from hand to hand. It just looks stunning.
Right. But we don't do anything like that, or you can't get hold of that particular fuel.
It's very difficult to get in the UK unless you have some sort of supplier or something like that. If you want to learn more about fire eating, fire breathing, body burning, there is a book by a magician called Brian Brushwood. I think it's called The Professional Guide to Fire Eating.
Okay.
It's an amazing book. If you get it in hardback, I think it's around about $40, $50, but Amazon have a Kindle version which has video links in it. I think that's around $20, $30.
Okay, all right. Well, that's great. That's great for people. If anybody wants to do a bit of fire eating, there's the book. Very good.
Obviously, it is suggested that you don't try this without a professional, but if you absolutely had to do it, I would say look into that. That's the best resource in the world for fire eating.
And then this is so a lot of your act is around the. So would you say this is circus acts? Is it a circus act, or is it? Yeah. That's fair enough. So you can because it, as you say, when you started all of this, the first thing you do is you go and train with like-minded, circus performers, and you learn your skills.
Yeah, precisely. I joined a youth circus up in Newcastle called Let Circus or Five Ring Circus. It's the same circus either way. And I learned performance skills, juggling, unicycling, just group activities like that.
That's wonderful. And also with this going on, have you had any dodgy moments where you're sword swallowing and it's not coming out, or the fire eating is not going the way? Any?
I've had one accident, and it was only about a month ago now. So I hadn't been taking care of my straight sword particularly well, which I have completely revamped now. And I hadn't noticed, but in the tip, where it had been rounded off, there had been a nick that had formed somehow. Maybe I'd cluttered it off something.
Yeah.
So I swallowed the sword, and as it went down, it nicked my tonsils.
Ooh.
But I didn't know that that's what it had done at the time. So I swallowed it down, pulled it back out, and there's this long line of blood
Ooh.
along the blade of the sword. So I had to cut my act there. I just wiped the sword under my arm and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Don't forget to tip your street performers. I'm going to the hospital.
Everybody's screaming.
No, they didn't see it.
They didn't see how you were professional to the core there. You
well, if a crowd sees blood, they don't pay.
Yeah, right, okay. Oh, how times have changed.
Yeah, as much as I absolutely adore my art form as an art form, I still need money.
Yeah, of course, and you need to live. And then, so you go to A&E, and then I take it you have to explain what you do for a living.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad.
They were very good at it.
Oh, fantastic. And you were, so that's part of that. Now, we were talking earlier as well, and now there's another great performer up in the Northeast, because that's where you're based. How long have you been doing this for, if I can ask you?
Sword swallowing as a street performance act. I've been doing it for almost a year now. I've been a street performer for around about 3 years, maybe.
Okay, fantastic. And Warren Speed, who and I know he shoots films and he does various performances. Now, he did male burlesque at one point.
Yes.
Now, burlesque is very, very female based. Now, you've just said you've started to do not mermaid but merman acts. What does that involve?
Mermaning, so it's actually a form of child's entertainment, which is weird given how I appear. I didn't think I'd ever find any way to do kids entertaining. But so I work with a company called Pure Imagination Events, who hire out a mermaid who's actually my girlfriend, which is kind of how
Okay.
So they have a mermaid for hire for kids' parties, and I just became one of their mermaids. If there are two mermaids required, sometimes I have to play a pirate to look after our main mermaid and make sure everything's going safe and fine.
Okay, and so mermaids have, obviously the bottom half is of a fish, so that's the half woman, half fish. So is that going for the merman? He's half man, half fish, or are you a bigger fish? Or that's what it is. So
no, it's So what we wear is we have something on our feet called a monofin.
Right.
Which is like a flipper, but it's one giant flipper for 2 feet, and you can buy tail skins to go on top of that, which make it look like you have a tail. It's great.
So this is in a swimming pool type party situation, obviously, because I was going to say you can't just turn up in a front room hopping around.
No, there are formats for dry parties.
Okay.
Singing songs, telling stories. Hannah, my girlfriend, is an amazing storyteller.
Fantastic. Well, my question is later on. I was going to say, who would you recommend I interview for the Funny Peculiar podcast? Your girlfriend sounds perfect. An actual mermaid. There's one.
Yeah. If you want to interview, Hannah Potter from Pure Imagination Events. She actually co-owns the business.
And who else? Any other recommendations?
Natty Lunatrix, if you want another really dedicated circus performer in the area, or Dan Brown and Paul Dewhurst do a really amazing juggling act together. Just really funny juggling.
Fantastic. That they sound absolutely brilliant. I'll check them out. And where can we see you next, or what are you up to?
It's mainly performing on the streets of Northumberland Street in Newcastle.
Okay. And with summer approaching, I take it then it's warming up, so street performing obviously easier. Will you get to lots of festivals during the summer?
I'm going to try and do the Fringe this year. It's been quite a few years since I've been up to the Fringe, unfortunately. So I'll be up at Edinburgh Fringe for at least a week this year.
Okay, fantastic.
At the very least.
Brilliant. I'll copy in when we do the podcast all your links to all your stuff. It
great.
just says thank you very much again, Mr. Freak, for being on Funny Peculiar. that was brilliant. I certainly now know a lot about coat hangers that I didn't, but so no, that was brilliant. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much, man. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.
So there we have it. Everything you want to know about sword swallowing, you know now. So a big thank you again to Mr. Freak. Now you can find him on his Facebook page, which is Daniel Dorian Johnson, and in brackets is Mr. Freak. So if you type in any of those, you'll find him. And just a reminder again, his Instagram account is Mr. Freak _sword swallower. So you can get him there. Brilliant stuff. Thank you again. What a great guest. We got some more brilliant people lined up. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget, keep downloading, keep subscribing, and keep it funny peculiar.